Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 87 of the Dynasty Junkies podcast, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I am your host, Rocky Petrella at Dynasty FF Addict, and this week I got my man Scott Sidlow here with me. Scott, how you doing?
What's up, man? Bears are making moves, baby. Woo! Tear it down.
That concerns defensive players. We don't worry about that.
IDP. I'm just kidding. I don't even know what that is. Sorry, I tried.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure our guest here is not doesn't care too much about defensive players either, so that works.
Ooh,
I've heard him say it on the podcast. He's like defensive players. What are that?
I'm in a single IDP league, and I don't know what I'm doing.
and that voice you heard is Kane Fossell at Devy _Kane. Kane, happy to have you here this week. How you doing tonight?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for having me. Even though I don't know about IDP, I still managed to have a team with Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau on it. So
pretty nice.
People act like I don't know what I'm doing, but somehow I have two of the best defensive ends that we've seen in a very long time.
Even I know those names.
Those are like the only two I know. If you get me past that, I have no idea who we're talking about.
I know the safety Hamilton too, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna get right into it because we got a lot of stuff we're gonna probably cover tonight. First, we have to get into this crazy news week in the NFL. Everything went nutso earlier in the week. We'll start with some of the less interesting stuff first and then move up to some of the bigger moves. So the one thing that happened earlier this week was the franchise tags. Adams was tagged, Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin, and then the three tight ends, Mike Gesicki, Dalton Schultz, and David Njoku. I guess we'll get into those three tight ends first. I think we could probably all agree that Njoku makes no sense. So let's talk about the other two. What do you think on these two? Dalton Schultz is a guy I'm very interested in. I loved him even before the tag. I kind of assumed he was coming back. And now that we know that Cooper's likely gone, Gallup, who knows, what he's going to be like at least to start the year. He was tight end 3 last year, tight end 7 point per game. I mean, I think he's going under the radar. What are your thoughts on Schultz, Kane, and Gesicki, if you want to chime in on him too?
Yeah, so I like Schultz a little more than I like Gesicki, which is probably not the normal take that you'll hear. But I want guys that, are going to be in an offense where the ball's getting thrown more. All right. And we noticed when the other tight end, the one that hasn't played that everyone thinks is better than Schultz on the Cowboys, whatever his name is, he got hurt again. Right. So it's literally just Schultz. Right. And if we're getting rid of Amari Cooper, I realize that you can't just give all the targets of one player to the next player. I get that. But you have to believe that a percentage of those are going to go to Schultz. Right. They have to go somewhere. And I think Schultz is going to be, if he even gets an uptick, let's say 5-10%, we're looking at a borderline top 5 tight end for very, very cheap prices.
He could be the number 2 target on that team, at least to start the year, like with Gallup recovering, if he's even starting the year.
Assuming they resign Gallup.
That's true. I mean, he hasn't officially, the rumors are that he will be, and technically Cooper hasn't officially left either, but it seems that's the way it's going to go. So
the fun part, right, is if, let's say that Cooper leaves, let's say that Gallup does resign, he's not going to start the season, right, because of the injury. There's a chance that like Schultz could be putting up some monster weeks, week 1, week 2, week 3, and you can just ship him out.
Yep.
Right. Use the 1 or 2 weeks of really, really good tight end production and ship him out for Dawson Knox plus something. Right. Ship him out for Dallas Goedert plus a little bit. Right. Because people are going to be trying to chase those really big weeks and trying to figure out who's going to be the next big tight end. And if you can do that, that's just going to kind of set you ahead a little bit. And you might as well accrue the value on Schultz before you try to move it.
Yeah, and like we said, I think no one's really talking about. And he's not going to be one of those. He's never going to, I think, get into that elite range that we all talk about, the Kelsey and the Pitts and all that. But if you want to not pay up for those guys, which I know a lot of people like to play it the way, I think he's a perfect target. In terms of the other guys, I mean, I guess Adams, is basically the same. I guess we can get into it too. Aaron Rodgers returns, gets all his thunder stolen from him a couple hours later.
So great.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. I mean, he put out a tweet and said he hadn't officially signed it yet.
Yeah,
so he'll get his another day in the headlines.
Right.
Don't worry.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of status quo. I don't know if there's much to pull off fantasy wise from those two coming back. Godwin's a little interesting to me because who the hell's throwing to him? Are you a buyer on Godwin, Scott?
Yeah, always. I mean,
are you worried about the quarterback situation?
No, and here's why. Because Bruce Arians is kind of a diva, and remember when Arizona was kind of heading towards a retool rebuild, he was like, I'm out of here, I retire. See ya. I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, oh, come to Tampa Bay and you got, Jameis, and then we'll try to get you somebody good like Brady, and hey, how did that work out? I don't think he's sticking around there, knowing you also have Byron Leftwich as well. He's either going to bounce if they don't bring somebody in. Like, honestly, I think he'll just retire. I seriously do. And they'll just turn it over to Leftwich. And really nothing will change, to be honest with you. But he's sticking around because they're still in that window and they're going to try to bring somebody in. Don't know who it's going to be, but there's not too many guys left. So they're going to bring in someone. I don't think they're starting Blaine Gabbert. He could have stayed in Arizona and started Blaine Gabbert. Why didn't he do that then? It was the same guys. It was him and Leftwich, and then Gabbert was the QB, and they all came over to Tampa Bay. So, I mean, if he didn't do that then, why would he do it now? What's the difference? I don't think Trask is ready as much as they liked him. So they're going to bring somebody in, and regardless of who it is, it'll be fine. Evans just always seems to be hurt. He kind of just plays like one. He runs 4 routes now, basically. If that, it's maybe 3 routes because, he's out there on one leg half the time. So Godwin is really the guy. He's the chain mover. He's running the crossing routes. He's going to make those plays. And yeah, it was a little bit later in the season, but he's still really young. They tend to come back quickly from ACLs nowadays. So I'm not too worried about it. If this is going to dip his value, cool, let me buy. Because either they're going to re-sign him and they're going to have a plan at quarterback, or he's going to go somewhere else. So whatever. I mean, you can't worry about that situation every time. You're like, wow, he's a great young wide receiver, but where's he going to play? Who's going to throw him the ball? I don't know. I don't care. Just give me the value dip. Let me buy him now and we'll see what happens. How much lower is his value going to get at this point?
Right. Yeah, and he's the obviously younger than Evans. Also, I think the safer of the two, regardless of quarterback. He can be that kind of PPR machine, even with the potentially not great quarterback. I think where Evans lives more off those touchdowns. So having Brady tremendously, and even Jameis before that, he would fling it up there and all that kind of stuff.
Hey, it could be Jameis again.
That's true. It could.
It could. I mean, it's possible. It's a non-zero chance.
So we'll go from one franchise receiver to one who avoided the franchise tag, and Mike Williams. 3 years, $60 million for Mike. I think 45 was guaranteed, something like that, which was kind of crazy to me. But Kane, what are your thoughts on Mike Williams? He got that hot start last year. Then he kind of looked like, I guess, Mike Williams again. So does this give you any more faith in Williams, just knowing he's tied to Herbert, or he's just like whatever, he's just one of in a sea of receivers and you're not that interested?
I don't think it makes me feel better. Right? Like he's fine. Right. But I think we have to have realistic expectations overall, right? We have to realize that he's probably never going to be like this super elite guy that we wanted him to be coming out of college. But he is serviceable enough, right? But if we're expecting anything more than like a low end wide receiver 2 to like mid wide receiver 2, like almost exactly like Michael Pittman, then you're not going to get much. So I think he's fine. I think he's a fine player, but I don't think he's one that I necessarily want on my teams.
Just FYI, Mike Williams and Michael Pittman finished 6 points apart last year. So yeah, that's right on.
That's
weird.
Yeah, and I'm with you on Mike Williams. I never, but even at the start of last year, I wasn't that interested in Mike Williams. he'll have his boom weeks. He's going to score some touchdowns. He'll catch some deep balls, but like you said, he's just that wide receiver too. There's not really the huge upside there. So let's get into some of the more interesting. And this feels like it happened like a month ago at this point with some of the other stuff that's happened since. But the Calvin Ridley suspension, which I guess how happy was the NFL with the Russell Wilson trade the next day to totally drown that out.
Buried that.
Yes. But so suspended a year at least for gambling on the NFL. And it's just, what are you doing with them? I'm kind of the mind, I just want to get out. He's going to be gone 2 years. Once assuming he comes back after a year. We were talking about it on Trade Addicts on Tuesday. I guess it's almost similar to Michael Thomas. He's going to be about a little younger, but around the same age as Michael Thomas once he finally plays again too. Don't know what kind of offense he's going to be in. I guess there's a theory that you could hold, and obviously his value will theoretically increase the closer he gets to playing. But is it ever going to increase that much? What do you think, Scott? Are you getting out for whatever you can? How low are you willing to take to get out?
I was already getting out, and I was down to 3 shares, and so it's unfortunate I couldn't get rid of those other 3 before this.
Yeah, I'd actually gotten out of a lot of mine last year on competing teams trying to get points. So
right, so that's kind of where I was at too. And honestly, he was an older player coming in already, and then his value just kind of skyrocketed because he did what he did, right? And so I'm not going to have a lot of those players unless I drafted them. So yeah, it's unfortunate. There's not a lot you could do. I heard a couple trades for him was like a third. Another trade was like 2/4 and 2/5. Like, yeah, I'd rather he just rot on my roster for that. Unless it's like a really shallow roster and I needed the spot, but I just don't really play any leagues like that, so I can't think of a scenario. He might as well he could just rot on my roster, I guess. I'm not going to sell him for that. Would I take like a second? I don't know. There's a bunch of receivers that are okay-ish this year. They'll never be Ridley probably, but like,
don't tell me I don't know when you know just about damn well you'd probably take a second for him.
Yeah, I
realistically, right?
Rebuilding probably.
If you just look at the value, right? And if you're on a team that, are you going to compete this year? Probably not. Are you going to compete next year when maybe he gets to come back and he's 28, 29 years old?
Yeah,
and he's going to be the pivotal piece that's going to push you over the top. Like, realistically, it's probably not going to happen. And your team should have already been formed before the Calvin Ridley news anyways. So getting a second for Ridley is actually a really good deal. I just moved Calvin Ridley and a 2024 Devy 4th for a 2022 Devy 2nd and Rocky's favorite receiver, Jalen Reagor.
Okay. Wow.
Not that I like Jalen Reagor, there you go. But I would have taken it just for the pick.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I would take a breath of fresh air for Jalen Reagor.
Yes, to be clear, he is maybe my least favorite wide receiver.
You had to clarify.
I spammed the league. Everyone who had a 23 second, I threw it out there, did not get one. All rejects. The best counter offer I got was the 212.
I'd rather have a 22 second than a 23 second, to be honest with you.
I was just trying to get what I could.
Okay. All right.
I thought maybe I'd get more luck getting a year out. I did get a counter of a 212 that's still sitting in my inbox that I haven't decided on. But would you go out? Would you get out on the 212?
Yeah.
Are you competing?
Doesn't matter if he's competing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's iffy. We this is TA10 where we didn't play last year.
Oh, right. Yeah. I guess. There's enough like depth, I guess, of this class. Like, I can find like 15 receivers that I'd be fine with taking. Would I take them straight up over Ridley? I don't know. So that's pretty much what you're asking is, are you going to take, Sky Moore over Calvin Ridley? I guess not really. I'm not excited about it, but I suppose you're buying back about 7 years, 6-7 years, or maybe 5 in some of these cases. So yeah, I guess I'd have to agree with Kane. It's probably second's probably fine.
Yeah, and I was looking at the I was looking just now at the DLF ADP, trying to see how low I'd have to go to see if maybe like trying to find a player, and they have the rookies mixed in now. So, but I mean, I'm down to like wide receiver 44 is Brandon Cooks. Do you think anyone's given Brandon Cooks for Calvin Ridley?
Oh yeah, no chance.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. It's like you have to go so far down.
That helps.
Kadarius Toney for Calvin Ridley.
I would do that. Tony sucks. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, Michael Gallup is wide receiver 50, by the way. That's a total buy.
Yeah,
I mean, DJ Chark or Adam Thielen for Calvin Ridley. Would you take that?
Yeah.
That's where I'm at, and they're with the rookies thrown in. They're wide receiver 51 and 53, so it's pretty far down there to try and find. And I don't even know if that gets accepted. If you're a competing team with Adam Thielen, I don't know if they're giving that up for Calvin Ridley, even though I don't have a lot of confidence in a 32-year-old Thielen or whatever. But
yeah,
it's pretty bleak. I mean, it might. Yeah, you just got to take whatever you can get. I think at this point, like you said, for thirds, I think I'm holding. But anything, I think I'm going to accept that 212. So it's
that's crazy.
You're looking at a guy that's going to be going 29 at the end of the 23 season. So you're not going to get. His value is never going to get that much higher, even once he comes back anyway. So
true.
Unless he just somehow goes nuts at 28, 29. So, okay, so we'll get into the couple of trades we had this week in the NFL. The big one was Russell Wilson went to the Broncos. They didn't get Aaron Rodgers, but they did get a quarterback. So a lot of fantasy implications there. Noah Fant goes to Seattle. Drew Lock goes to Seattle. I don't know that anyone actually believes Drew Lock will be starting in Seattle, but he is there.
Jared Goff situation, probably.
You think he's think he starts next year?
Yeah, he might be a bridge. We'll see. If they take somebody, or they might be doing the thinly veiled tank and try for 23 class. But then again, I don't know. They took on a veteran D lineman too in that trade, didn't they? So it's not really a tanking move, but yeah, who knows?
Yeah, but by the way, I just saw in the comments, Kyle Senner mentioned he got Gabe Davis and Russell Gage for after the suspension. I would just be ecstatic to get that return for Ridley at this point. So if you can make
I would do
it. Yeah. And I don't even think Russell Gage has a team, but I don't even care.
So, but what is Ridley Truther going to have to change his name to now?
He mentioned Deontay Truther, but I stole that. So, but so what are I guess the question a lot of people are asking is it Judy or Sutton? So Kane, are you favoring one over the other in terms of how this affects them with Russell Wilson coming over there?
I now will do anything to trade Jerry Jeudy away.
I love that take. I guess
but the fun part, right, is that people thought that Jerry Jeudy was already worth a 23 first. Now he actually is worth a 23 first. So just go and trade him for a 23 first. Right?
Yeah.
And do the thing, right, where everyone does. Let's try see if we can get a first and a second. You're not gonna, but you can try, and then it'll get countered down to a first, and that's the one that you'll accept, right? But I would take any random 23 first over Jerry Jeudy. What I would like to do is I would really like to trade anywhere from the 204, 203, 204 for Cortland Sutton. I would make that move.
Yes.
Yeah, I was on the buy Sutton train even before this happened with the idea that he might get a quarterback upgrade.
I've been buying him since he was born. I've been waiting for this day. I'm so happy.
Yeah, and I'm not. I like Jeudy come in like everyone else did, but from what we've seen, I've not been impressed, and I just think he's not what everybody wants him to be. I'm not sure he's ever going to be what everyone wants him to be. I mean, it could be even with a good quarterback. I'm not sure, and I think Sutton is going to be more Russ's guy on deep balls. I think he's going to be more Russ's guy in the red zone, and those are two things that can get you a decent amount of fantasy points. Judy will be a PPR guy, but I'd much rather have Sutton. Like you said, you can certainly get him cheaper, whether it's at that 203, 204 range or whatever it is. It's going to be cheaper than Judy. So does this change anything? Does this affect? Do you think Gordon's coming back now because Russ is there? That's the other thing I was thinking about. And what's that going to do for Javonte?
It's going to be difficult for them to have the cap space to do that now.
That's a good point. I was just thinking that they're all in to win, so that they'd want to keep the vet. But yeah, I'm not sure what their cap situation is, but that makes sense. Any other fantasy implications from this trade that either of you guys want to touch on before we move on?
Well, I do just want to throw out there that, I mean, there was a particular podcast about 1 week ago exactly at this time that told everyone, maybe go out and add Alberto, to your pick him up off waivers. He was on a couple waivers in my leagues earlier this year. I've gotten him thrown in cheap on trades. He's just one of those guys that I keep at the end of my roster. He's one of a handful of tight ends that, hey, Harrison Bryant, right? Well, Njoku got tagged and it looks like they're keeping Hooper. So that one's a bust. But, oh, wait, Denver just traded Fant. Now, Alberto might hit at least it gives him a value boost. You can trade him or package him or something. But, those are the type of guys where you can grab a handful of shares of them for nothing. And then when something like this happens, and honestly, the writing was on the wall. They told us exactly what they were doing. They extended all their receivers. They got themselves a young running back, and they put themselves in position to get a quarterback, but they didn't do anything with Fant. Now, they didn't have to yet, but it was pretty obvious that they weren't going to have the cap room then to re-sign him. The fifth-year option is going to be coming up. That's a lot of money. And then they had Alberto behind him, who was kind of, a highly rated prospect and then slipped a little bit in the draft. And it just made sense. Now, I'm not saying Alberto is going to be like anything great. I'm saying more like you just got free value. So sell him now. Right. But again, those are the type of guys you need to have on the end of your roster, because that's free money that you just got in March. That's a beautiful thing.
So I have two things that I think are worth touching on. First, I'm trading just about any late third I can for KJ Hamler, because that's the cost right now. I wonder if you could almost get it for like a early fourth, or like just a throw in on
you probably
another
can
deal that you like. They're like, oh, KJ Hamler, I don't care about him, but like he's really talented. Like he's a good wide receiver as a third guy. Like Tim Patrick has.
I was just going to say the Tim Patrick slander.
Well, look at Tim
just
Patrick's
resign
contract.
him though?
Like kind of. Like I realize they'll probably play him this season, but you're looking at a 29-year-old Tim Patrick.
Right.
And at the end of this season, he has an out for $1.5 million in dead cap.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So he's going to play for a year. I'd rather have KJ Hamler for 2 on a late third, or maybe just a throw in. Also, the other thing is that I think we're going to get to the point where the value of DK Metcalf is going to swing too far the other way, where all of a sudden DK Metcalf is worth buying.
Great,
so like if you're
point.
not like instantly competing this year, and you have any guy like Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill or any of those guys, and you want to go see if you can get maybe DK plus a little piece to a competing team that is DK, I think you're probably going to get that deal done.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point.
And we're probably talking like DK Metcalf plus a 23 second.
Oh, it'd be awesome. Yeah.
That's a really, really good trade if you're not competing and get out of the age.
I think that's a good point on the not competing, because I think he is going to, it is obviously, I think, going to hurt him this year for sure. And depending on what 100%. They do at quarterback going forward. Even last year with Russ and with Geno Smith, he was he was a wide receiver, high end wide receiver too. But after Russ's injury, he was kind of a low end wide receiver too from that point on. So I think that's probably what you're going to see next year. But you're right. He's still young, and in a year or two, they'll hopefully rectify that QB situation, and he'll be back to being DK Metcalf. What do you think this does for Russ? Does this increase his value for you? Is it neutral? Is it I don't think there's any way you can construe it as a negative. I kind of think it's pretty much neutral. So if you can get somebody who wants to pay up for him now just because he's with the Broncos, all those weapons, blah blah blah, I don't mind him as a sell. But what do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, this is to a much smaller extent, so don't take this out of context. But it's kind of like when a quarterback leaves Adam Gase or when a quarterback leaves Matt Nagy. Like you're leaving Pete Carroll, and like that can only be a good thing. So I just think like, yeah, he had the weapons and everything. And I mean, he made plays. He's a great quarterback. So I don't think it's going to be like a drastic change. It's not going to be like Ryan Tannehill going from Miami to Tennessee and just exploding, right? Something like that. You know, I mean, it's certainly possible, you know, we'll see. It could be, will he play like Rodgers? You know, will that be the same offense? Are they going to bring over, you know, exactly what they had in Green Bay? You know, you could kind of start to plug those pieces in there and see how it would fit together. But it's not going to be anything major. So I think you're on the right track as far as if somebody thinks it's a significant upgrade and you could sell, then I'm cool with that. But at the same time, it could be very similar to a Stafford situation where they're about the same age. I think they're like 6 months apart, like both 33-ish. You know, Stafford comes over from the Lions and look what he does, right? Kind of a similar scenario where, you know, they finally unleash him a little bit and he's got some good weapons, and, you know, we'll see what that offense looks like with him running it. But I think there's good opportunity there. So I'm excited for my Russell Wilson shares. Whereas before it's like, he wasn't in that elite tier, right? He wasn't like in that top 8. He's not in my top 8. And then he's not also like, he's not like a QB2 really. I mean, I guess he is. If you have a top 8 and he's not quite in there, he's almost a QB2, right? But he just wasn't exciting. You know, he wasn't like, oh, I don't want this guy. But at the same time, you weren't like, oh, I want this guy. You know, he was just, now I feel like there's a little bit more excitement. So if you can use that to sell and better your team, great. And if you could just use him to win a championship, then, I mean, I would do that.
Okay, and then the one piece of news that actually didn't happen Tuesday, happened the next day, was Carson Wentz getting traded from the Colts. I must say I very much enjoyed seeing that he got traded for, what was it, like a couple of thirds, or that can turn into a second or something like that, after the Eagles swindled the Colts for a first-round pick for him. So, and then they found out what Carson Wentz was and moved him, shipped him off. But I actually don't hate him, especially if Washington adds a pass catcher either in free agency or in the draft. I actually don't hate him as a buy for fantasy, because everyone thinks Carson Wentz is trash, and he's not particularly good as a real life QB, but he produced. I don't know how many people realize, if you didn't have Carson Wentz on your roster, that he was pretty decent for fantasy last year. He was yeah, well, yeah, depending on your scoring, low end 1, high end 2, yeah. So I think it was 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions last year. I mean, it looks good on paper. He just, like I said, in real life, he just chokes it at the right time and or the wrong time for the Colts. And right. And at the end of the year, they were trying to kind of take the ball out of his hands. I remember there was some Thursday night game where he threw like 13 passes or something like that for, I think, the majority of the games where his number was at. So, but I don't hate him as a buy. What do you think about Carson Wentz that's in Washington? I mean, he's not anyone who's going to, you know, be a high-end QB1 or anything, but if you handle quarterback like I do, or if you want a QB2, I think he's fine. What do you think, Kane?
He is okay. He is not going to be. Here's what I will tell you. For everyone saying like, oh, this is a pretty good upgrade for Terry McLaurin. No, it's not. Right. And here's why, right? If we look at what Michael Pittman did last season and how he did do a whole lot better than he had ever done before, those were on passes that were deep down the field, right? And a lot in jump ball situations. That's not Terry McLaurin's game. He's a very good route runner. So you want him to be utilized over the middle. And that's not where Carson Wentz throws the ball. So like to think that this is going to be a step up for Terry McLaurin almost gives you a little bit of a sell opportunity. I would be looking at getting just about any other wide receiver 2 plus a nibble. So I'd be looking at even Michael Pittman. I would be looking at Michael Pittman plus something, even though he doesn't have a quarterback. Like, right? It's really just about what that plus can be.
Free Chad Kelly.
He's not still there, is he?
No.
Is he in jail now or something?
I think so. Yeah, that's what I thought. I do think he was there at one point, but yeah, and I kind of agree with that. I mean, you could argue that Wentz is the best QB McLaurin has had, but that's not really saying much. And everyone said that about Allen Robinson last year too, and look how that worked out. So yeah, Scott the Bears fan just shaking his head. So yeah, I guess one of the other thing I was thinking of, what do you think Indy does? Is it Jimmy G?
I don't know. Well,
they don't have a first round pick.
Yeah. It's weird who the names that they've thrown out. They're like, Jordan Love is an obvious option for this team. One, yeah. And I was like, he's an obvious option? I don't know if he's obvious. Like, what scheme does he fit? Like, San Jose State, that's the scheme that he fits. I mean, I was not a fan of him.
He fits the every other different quarterback every year kind of system that they're working towards.
I think this is the fifth or sixth quarterback in the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah,
they're probably going to end up liking Carson Strong on day 2 just because they just had Carson Strong on their team.
What, Phillip Rivers?
No, literally Carson Wentz, a guy with a big arm, terrible knee problems.
Yeah.
That they think is mobile, but actually isn't. Can't move around a lot behind the line of scrimmage. Can't run to actually extend plays. It's basically what they already had. Except Carson Strong is like the exact middle between Carson Wentz and Phillip Rivers.
Okay,
like he's less mobile, which is somehow worse.
Yeah, he's
Naheem Hines season.
He looks like he's running through molasses when I see him try and move around. Carson Strong.
He picked up 10 yards on a play, and it was clocked, and it took him like 7.5 seconds to move those 10 yards from like his 7-step drop to get to the 10 yards. It took him 7.5 seconds.
Okay,
that's
well,
not good.
Well, this Carson Strong talk is a good way to transition to the second half of the show, where, of course, with Kane here, we did want to talk about the rookie class, some questions around that. One general question I wanted to ask you, and it's funny because I came up with some of the stuff on the show sheet earlier this week, and then I saw you didn't happen to not be on this week, but on the Devy Marketplace, you guys actually kind of talked about this, which was the Combine. And we're not going to really get into the Combine. I've heard a bunch of podcasts talking about the ups and downs, winners, losers, blah, blah, blah. I don't really want to get into it because to me, it doesn't matter that much. For me, the Combine matters. Basically, I like to get the actual, heights and weights of everybody. I like to see the tight ends, because athleticism is such a big deal for tight ends and for them to succeed in the NFL. And the only other thing I really generally care about is if someone's an extreme outlier one way or the other, like the Kyron Williams thing where he just tested horribly. That affects me. But other than that, I don't really worry too much about the Combine. What about you, Kane? Do you get it? Do you move much from what you see here?
So I don't necessarily move a ton, but I move within tiers a lot based on the Combine, right? Because if someone doesn't perform well at the Combine, the one thing that does affect, that has more statistical, what do you call them, trends or whatever. I'm not a numbers guy.
And that's what I take from it. It's draft capital, yeah.
Yeah, draft capital that matters a lot. Your Combine matters a ton on the draft capital. So that's why it matters. And that's why we have to move within tiers, right? And
I'll move then when we get the draft capital. But that's what I think the biggest impact of the Combine is the draft capital.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we see with the Combine, right, is a lot of double counting. Right? If we believed that Jamar Chase was really, really fast last year, and then he ran at his pro day, and we're like, yep, he was fast, let's move him up again. Like, that doesn't make sense, right?
Oh.
If we know that, like when Henry Ruggs was running, right? Henry Ruggs ran, we're like, whoa, he's fast. And it's like we forgot every catch he ever made at Alabama and ran with the ball in his hands. And then he's like, oh, he ran well at the combine. Let's move him up again. Like, that's not how it works. We can't just keep double counting. But what we can do is try to evaluate what they actually do on the film and see if it matches what happens at the combine, right? That's why there's a lot of questions about Treylon Burks, right? Because he can run up to 23 miles an hour. Why is he running a 4.55? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think I was going to say there. I was just going to ask you kind of the other way with possible double counting. Do you look at like a David Bell that way? Nobody expected him to test that well. I don't think he's not a supreme athlete. That's not what you're looking for from him. But then I have heard some negative talk about how he tested it. Is that to me? I mean, I'm sorry. Is that to you an example of that double counting in the opposite way, the negative way?
Well, here's the deal, right? With a guy that kind of attacks vertically, the easiest way for someone to attack vertically is with speed. And so the hope really with David Bell is just that he ran in the 4.5s, right? If David Bell ran in the 4.5s, if he ran a 4.59, this wouldn't be a question, right? But when he's coming out running 4.65 and you're like, ooh, okay. Like, we see on the film that he doesn't necessarily win with speed all the time, that he wins a little more with precision. But the problem is the cornerbacks are better in the NFL, and it's going to be more difficult to break away with him with just precision when he doesn't use as much speed. So I think it hurts him a little bit in the sense that he's not going to be, bigger and stronger than most of the cornerbacks that he's facing anymore. He might be bigger than some of them, but he might not be stronger than most. So it's going to be difficult for him to just completely body cornerbacks over and over and over again. So I think that's where it's going to hurt him a little bit. But overall, I think David Bell is who we thought he was going to be.
That's what
I'm saying. But just a slower version of who we thought he was going to be.
And it's so funny what you said there to me too, though, because like you said, if you ran a 4.59, because it has that 4.5, and that's why the combine a little bit kind of doesn't matter as much. Like what you were just talking about was 600ths of a second. So I mean, what is 600ths of a second? So I don't know, but. Another question I wanted to ask you, Kane, while we have you here, is this 22 class. Everyone's been kind of down on it. I'm sure we're going to get more hyped, and probably some people already are getting a little more hyped thanks to the combine. But as we get closer, there's going to be guys everyone loves. But it's definitely been considered a down class, especially with everyone looking ahead to 2023, which every pick in the first round is a golden god. So. Where are you on this 2022 class? Are you as down on it as the consensus seems to be, at least coming into the combine?
No. And here's why. So everyone thinks that if you don't have like these top tier talents, right? Let's look at what 2019 when Kyler Murray came in. People thought that was a pretty solid draft class because there was Kyler Murray, right? Who was there behind Kyler Murray? What, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, and we thought that was a star-studded draft class. It was no, because there was one really, really good player, and they're like, oh, we'll just say that it's a good class because, we had at least one guy that we knew was going to hit, right? But in this class, we don't have that top-tier talent, but what we do have is the deepest draft class in NFL history ever.
That's right.
Right? Like, people don't realize that part of it, right? This is the most amount of players ever that are draft eligible ever by like hundreds of players, right? So if you don't think that pool is going to get better a little bit because there's more people, well, A, that's wrong, and B, that is right. What's happening, right? These players are getting better. So sure, we might not have that top tier talent, right? We might not have the Jonathan Taylor. We might not have the Kyler Murray. We might not have someone even remotely close to like Justin Fields or Trey Lance. That's fine. But what we do have is a draft class that you're going to get some really, really good players in the second round. And if we look back at 2019, did we get a lot of good players in the second round? No. We basically had like 8 good players in the entire draft is what it feels like. And one of those somehow is David Montgomery. So realistically, right, if we're trying to figure out what this draft class is, we have wide receivers like a bountiful amount of wide receivers. There's so many, and they all do so many different things. So if we want to know the biggest difference between, let's say, just this past draft class in 2020, I'm already getting too excited, and sorry if I'm talking fast, but this is what happens.
That's
if
great.
we look at 2021 versus 2022, right? The reason why a lot of people were kind of down on those wide receivers is because we didn't have X receivers, right? The wide receivers on the outside that were able to catch, the 120, 130 targets a game that are actually going to make them wide receiver 2s in the NFL or better, right? We had a lot of slot wide receivers, wide receivers. And this year, it's a ton of X receivers. This is more X receivers that we've had in a draft that have actually been good. It's a complete shock.
A long time, yeah.
Yeah, so, and there's so many of them, right? We have Treylon Burks, we have Drake London, we have Garrett Wilson, right? And those are just 3 of the top ones. And then you have guys like David Bell that can win on the outside. Like there's so many. I'm obviously gonna miss some, but like George Pickens can win on the outside. You have Jahan Dotson, even though he's small, he can win on the outside. You have Christian Watson, who's coming in at 6'4" and running a 4.4, that he's going to be able to win on the outside, right? You have Jalen Tolbert and Justin Ross, who are able to win on the outside, and those are guys you can get in the 3rd round of rookie drafts, right? Those weren't things that we were able to get in probably the last 3 or 4 draft classes, right? You had to hope that you hit on Chase Claypool as that X guy to be able to have one this deep, right? And we've never seen a draft with guys that are this talented this far down in a draft before.
Yeah, and then that's kind of where I'm at on it. I'm not hating on it as much as some. I kind of feel like we have a lot of potential contributors. There's just not as many, like you said. There's not the studs. There's not the Jamar Chase. There's not even the Najee Harris or obviously the quarterbacks we had last year. And I think that's another big reason for a lot of us who play Superflex. We're wondering if there's going to be any decent quarterbacks to get out of this draft or not. You still have, I think you said you had Willis as your 101. Is that where you're at still?
Yeah. Like we have to understand how important a quarterback is in Superflex, right? Especially with a guy that, like, since he's not running at the combine, I can tell you that he's already been hand timed at sub 4.4. So if you tell me that that's going to come out and people aren't just going to absolutely freak, right? Like a guy that fast, and sure, he's got a lot of work that he needs to do with his passing, right? Because he wasn't in a system that really made him pass or be good at passing for most of his career.
Would you say that he's further behind than like Trey Lance was at this point?
Yes, because Trey Lance had an absolute cannon.
Right. Okay.
Like Malik Willis has a strong arm, but I think he definitely needs work when it comes to progressions and things like that. But the one thing that you can't teach is a guy that's going to run sub 4.4 in the NFL, right? And especially when we care a lot about rushing yards at the quarterback position, that means a lot, right? And let's use Trey Lance as an example, right? Did Trey Lance lose any value from the 2021 rookie draft to what he is right now?
Not a bit.
No, he's kind of gained value.
Yeah.
He's up to what,
he hasn't
quarterback
disappointed
9?
us like some of the other guys.
Yeah,
right.
He's up to like quarterback 9, quarterback 10. Some people are having him ahead of Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
So if the quarterback sits, let's say that Malik Willis sits for a year, my investment's safe.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to make earlier. I was on with Scott Connor earlier today, and here's the thing. Look around the NFL and tell me how many teams are like super happy with their quarterback situation. Like maybe 12. And then you have like maybe another like 8 more that are like, we're okay right now. Or maybe we have somebody we're developing. But then that leaves like a good dozen teams that, okay, we'll fill a couple spots here with, maybe somebody will take a shot on Trubisky. Somebody trades for Jimmy G. There's a couple of situations that will be resolved there, or at least somewhat. But ultimately, there's probably 8 or 9 teams that you're just going to have to play a quarterback at some point. Like, these teams are not going to compete long for quarterback. I mean, look back at the final 4 teams, each of like the last 6 years. And there's like one or 2 teams that made it that far without a legitimate quarterback, right? And it just doesn't happen. So all the openings in the NFL mean that they're going to take quarterback. Whether this class is great or not, it almost doesn't matter. Like, you got to look back to, remember, like, Jake Locker and Christian Ponder and all those guys, like, how far up the boards did they get pushed up because they're quarterbacks? Like, we all knew they weren't great. We all knew this, and you don't have to know anything about football. Like, we just all knew that they were not great prospects, and yet here they are going 10, 12, 7, I think. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's just how it goes, right? I mean, there is a need for quarterbacks, and it's more evident than ever that there are teams that need them. There's like a huge gap right now. I think more than ever, in my opinion, between the have and have-nots with the quarterbacks. And, because a lot of these guys, why do you think they stuck around until they're 40? Because teams needed them. There was nobody to take their spot. So these guys are going to get draft capital. There's probably going to be 4 quarterbacks in the first round. The over-under is probably 4.5, right? I mean, maybe. Yeah,
I would guess the line right now is probably 3.5.
3.5. Okay. All right. Yeah, because there's probably one will sneak in at the end. So, I guess it depends on where you feel about like Matt Corral and Pickett, but there's going to be at least 3 in the first round, like almost guaranteed lock. You could bet on that. I mean, it's just because of the need and because of that 5th year and just the way that the NFL is set up. And so these guys are going to get an opportunity, even if they don't start. Even if Seattle takes one at 9 and they start Drew Lock for a few weeks, they're going to lose, and then they're going to start their young guy. You know what I mean? So, like, and just like Kane was saying, if a guy ends up behind a bridge where they sit for a year, that's fine too, because their value is then insulated. So really, to me, it's almost like this is why you just take quarterbacks with your rookie picks. I mean, I'm not saying that as like a blanket statement, but in general, I'm going to lean towards those guys. Even if they're not the elite talents, I'll still take that shot, and we'll see what happens.
And to reinforce the point you both are making, for sure, Scott, that I don't pay up for quarterbacks. I don't like to get the elite guy. I mean, not that I don't like to get the elite guys, but I don't like to pay up for the elite guys. If I can get them cheap, I'll sure take the elite guys. But
sure.
But even me in rookie drafts, I do like to draft quarterbacks because to me rookie drafts are all about value. I'm not sure of production on anybody I'm drafting in a rookie draft as opposed to, say, a startup or a trade I'm making. So, and you are right. They are going to hold that value. You're both right. Through at least a year. I mean, really more than that. I mean, like Sam Darnold was getting you a first for like 3 years. So as he continued to be horrible. I also just wanted to piggyback real quick on Scott's question about Trey Lance with Malik Willis. And I was thinking maybe even a more apt question might be, how does he compare to what Jalen Hurts looked like as a prospect coming out? Because Jalen Hurts is a guy that even to this day is not a great passer, but he's a good fantasy quarterback. And that's, I think, kind of the model possibly for Malik Willis, that he's going to just get you those points even if he doesn't throw that well. So I'm curious how he compares to Hurts as a prospect 2 years ago.
Worse as a passer, but a better runner.
Okay. That makes sense.
So 1 up, 1 down, right? But that's kind of to be expected.
Okay. And I saw there was a question in the chat here. Which 22 first round draft picks should we trade our 2023 first for? I think you guys talked about this on Dynasty Wall Street recently, right? 107?
Yeah, it's like 106, 107, somewhere in there for me.
What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I think I'm willing to go a little bit farther back. I'm not willing to go that high, I guess I should say. I don't know how. I can't speak.
Yeah, what's the highest pick you would trade at 2023?
Probably 109. Probably 109.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of right where both of you are. I think I'm 107, 108. We had a trade in one of my leagues where I commish, and like the Trade Addicts leagues, I post all of our trades on Twitter, and it was 105 for 2023 first, and 2023 first won 51-49. So I thought that was nuts.
I could be talked into like the 105. I could probably be talked into it. Like if I know the team isn't super strong.
I just think the challenge is you can't, once they get late, like everybody's kind of like, think about it. You're in a super flex tight end premium. There's really not a tight end you're taking in the first round. So there's maybe a handful of quarterbacks, depending on their draft capital. There's probably 3 running backs. Who knows if a 4th jumps in there, but it's probably 3 right now. And then there's a couple 2-3 receivers depending on where they land, whatever. So I think that puts it at like 8 or 9. But then the next group of players is pretty much receivers and or shitty quarterbacks and or like reaching on running backs. And so who's giving you a 23 first for that? You know what I mean? Like I don't think that trade's happening on the clock. So I think you'd have to do that now if you can pull it off. Otherwise I really don't see it happening on the clock. I don't see you being able to be like, I'll see who's there at 110 and then maybe trade out. Like it's not happening. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. As you guys were talking, I was thinking maybe another way to sort of ask this question, because everyone just thinks every 2023 first is going to be some great player. But I'm curious, and I'm kind of putting you a little bit on the spot here, Kane, but off the top of your head, like if you were, since you know these Devy guys and the guys that are coming out next year, and there's still, there's obviously a lot can change in a year, and there's the whole fact of the matter that you won't have these guys to play for you for a year to factor in. But if you were to like combine these two classes, how many of the 2022 guys do you think would make it into the 2023 first round? Like if you combine the two, how many would be 2022 guys? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yep, maybe 3.
Like 3?
Maybe 3. Be Garrett Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Breece Hall would probably sneak in there just because of the combine, and Malik Willis. That's it.
Okay.
And
so when you frame it that way, should you be trading the 104 then for a random 2023 if those 3 guys are off the board?
No, because you're assuming a lot more risk.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Right?
That's why I mentioned you're waiting the year and things can happen.
So, but in 23, right, you have Bijan Robinson, the running back from Texas, Coleridge Bernard Stroud IV, the quarterback from Ohio State, Bryce Young, the quarterback from Alabama, Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back from Alabama, Keyshawn Boutte, or Mr. Booty if you're nasty, the wide receiver from LSU, Jackson Smith-Njigba, the wide receiver from Ohio State, Tank Bigsby, the running back from Auburn, Zachary Evans, now the running back at Ole Miss, Jordan Addison, the wide receiver at Pitt, Quentin Johnston, the wide receiver at TCU, and Michael Mayer, the tight end at Notre Dame. And that's not counting the guys that are going to just absolutely explode this year.
Sure.
And
we don't even know
conversation.
about yet.
Right. So expect at least one other quarterback probably jump in there. Could be anyone from Anthony Richardson at Florida, Tyler Van Dyke at Miami, right? It could be either of those guys, maybe Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee, but he's 25, that he'd be coming into the NFL at 25 years old. So that'd be a little bit harder for him to get first round draft capital. But you're talking about a lot of really, really good players in the 23 class, right? And I think, can I go on a soapbox here?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. So here's the biggest thing, right? And I've talked about this a lot on the Devy Marketplace, is that we know that the 23 class is good, but you need to set your team up to actually win with the 23 class, right? That's the biggest thing that nobody is paying attention to right now, right?
Yeah, you're
because
right.
How do you build a team to actually win when you're going to draft a bunch of running backs? Oh, that means you should probably have quarterbacks and wide receivers on your team, right? The tight ends can sometimes, they could be piecemealed together, right? But if I am going for Bijan Robinson, right, I have the 101 or the 102, and I'm going to get Bijan Robinson one of those 2 picks, right? That means that I need to actually put my team together to utilize the best and most valuable years of Bijan Robinson's career.
Sure. Yeah, if your roster's trash, he's not going to do anything for you.
Exactly. Yeah. So then you're going to ruin the best years that you would have had with Bijan Robinson because you decided that you still needed to hold on to, like, let's say in 2023, your starting quarterbacks are Ryan Tannehill and Derek Carr, and you're like, oh, I can totally just do this. It's like, probably not.
Yeah.
Because at some point, one of those 2 isn't probably going to be a starting quarterback anymore. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, so realistically, right, you need to set your team up to actually compete in 2023. Let's say that I have 4 first-round picks in the 23 class, and I end just with an absolute haul, right? Let's say I get one of the top 2 quarterbacks. Granted, we don't even know, these quarterbacks don't always perform their first year. Like, Mac Jones statistically had the best rookie year in the quarterback class. Do you know who outscored him in his rookie season? EJ Manuel. So let's not act like, these quarterbacks can come out of nowhere in their rookie seasons and just absolutely bust onto the scenes, right? Like statistically, it's probably not going to happen. If none of these 5 good quarterbacks did it and EJ Manuel scored higher than them and that average was like 14.6 points a game, it's probably not going to happen for these quarterbacks, right? But let's say you end up with one of the 2 really good quarterbacks. Let's say the best case scenario, right? You have the top 4 picks. Let's say top 4 picks just to make it easy, right? You end up with Bijan Robinson. Let's say you take at least one quarterback, Coleridge Bernard-Stroud IV from Ohio State or Bryce Young, right? Let's say you take one of those. You're going to take Jahmyr Gibbs, and let's say you take a chance on a wide receiver, whether it's Kayshon Boutte or JSN, right? How do you think all 4 of those are going to do right away if your team sucks?
Right.
And not to mention that, like, not all running backs are going to just absolutely get every touch right away, right? Look at Javonte Williams. He obviously finished the season fine overall, but like, was he that top guy that people wanted him to be right away? No. So like then you might even be looking at 24 for these in 2024 for these guys to actually matter. And if you're not already building that team to have kind of those younger quarterbacks, whether it is a Macaroni Jones or someone like that, plus an older quarterback, then maybe you get another quarterback in the 22 class, the 23 class, and actually stabilize that quarterback room. Or you are building through the wide receivers and making sure that you have a lot of young guys, whether that's Deontay Johnson, whether that's T. Higgins, whether it's a bunch of those guys, and making sure that your core is actually strong. Maybe you have a really good core at wide receiver and you have like a Chase or a Jefferson or a Jalen Waddle or something like that, right? Then at least you're going to be strong at the core. But the difficult part, right, especially in the leagues that the 3 of us play in now, that it's not your cookie cutter like start 8 super flex.
Right.
We're talking we're start 9 isn't even really a thing that we would join a league for anymore. Nope. Start 10, you're like, okay, like you're getting better. But we're in like, right, we're talking about like start 11, start 12 leagues.
12,
and if you're really gonna tell me that you're gonna try to piecemeal like your wide receiver 2 or 3 is KJ Hamler, and then you're gonna like, I love KJ Hamler as much as the next guy, but if you're gonna tell me that Bijan Robinson is gonna all of a sudden compete and make your team competitive because KJ Hamler is your wide receiver 2 on your team, it's not going to happen, right? So if you don't try to build your team correctly and start doing it now, then your team is still going to suck with these guys. And you're going to be confused why you didn't win a championship when everyone said that the 23 class was good, because you don't know how to build a team.
Roster construction. # roster construction.
Okay. Yeah, no, all good points. That that was fun to listen to, Kate. He's very animated about it. But yeah, I know you have been. No, he's not wrong. And it's definitely a good point. Before we finish up on the rookies, I think Scott had mentioned he might have a couple players he wanted to ask about. One thing I wanted to ask you about myself, Kane, if Scott, you don't mind me going first, is a guy. I am nowhere near the film evaluator that guys like you and Zach Reed and other people are, but I do like to get my eyes on these guys, and I've been watching some recently. I've really started diving in these last few weeks, and one guy I don't hear talk. Not that people don't know him. He's a potential, I think, rookie first round pick, but not that people are talking about his lives. And you didn't even mention him. I think with all the guys you've mentioned on the podcast so far, is Jamison Williams. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on him. And like, is there a reason other than the injury that I should not love this guy as much as I do?
No. Like, I think you're going to run into something really, really similar that we're going to run into with Treylon Burks, right? And these are 2 completely different players with 2 completely different skill sets, right? But the thing we're going to run into is how many teams do they actually fit on? And that matters a lot, right? And what is the role that they're going to try to make Jamison Williams fit into?
Sure.
Right? Are they going to try to use him exactly how he's used at Alabama and he absolutely crushed it because they were using him over the middle, they were using him deep, they're using him on screens, and he can really do everything? Or are they going to Deshaun Jackson him?
That's what
right? Are they going to Henry Ruggs him? Right? And that's the biggest thing that worries me, right? But realistically, I think the chance that happens is probably like 10-15% that he's used just completely incorrectly. Like he's probably not going to go to the Eagles, so I think we'll escape that one.
Well, Matt Nagy isn't coaching anywhere, so we should be okay.
Oh no, he's back at the Chiefs, isn't he?
Well, but he doesn't have an influence over where the receivers will play.
True.
Hopefully.
That's true. Well, he just likes to cut off one side of the field.
That's right.
It's not Mitch Trubisky doing that. That was Matt.
No doubt.
No doubt. But I like Jamison Williams a lot. I think the injury concerns me a little bit. Just because I realize it's just, ACL tears are just commonplace almost at this point, which to say that is wild.
It is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, are you worried about the ACL tear? No, not really. It's like, no, he just had surgery on his knee. And you saw him working out his balance already, which he's way ahead of schedule. But I think what scares me is, right, I play a lot with value. I actually only care about value. I don't care about anyone's name on my fantasy football team because that's only going to hinder you and make you attached to certain players that you shouldn't be attached to. But I think what is going to kind of hurt things a little bit is, let's say he doesn't end up, fully playing in an NFL game until, let's say, week 6, right? Let's say he gets fully healthy, gets the complete all clear. I don't know when that's going to be, right? I'm not a doctor. I went to school to be an English teacher. Get off my back. So if we just look at, let's say he even plays week 4 for the first time, right? Then I've lost a few weeks of value by other rookies performing better than him. And let's say he maybe starts his first game week 6, right? They work him back in the first few weeks, like we see a lot. And then he kind of gets a start after that, right? It's like, okay. And then does he have that rapport now with the quarterback? Because he wasn't really fully present for training camp. He wasn't fully present for OTAs. So that rapport might not kick off right away. Right. And then we're a few weeks down the road and all of a sudden he's putting up big weeks, week 10, week 11, week 12, because he's a really, really talented player and they figured out how to use him. They figured out the chemistry. Right. But I lost like 6-8 weeks of value in there when I could have drafted someone else who might have more of a value gain right away, trade for Jamison Williams plus something, and then still get the same result towards the end of the season. And for me, that's what I care about.
It makes me think of, you remember when OBJ was a rookie and he got hurt early on. And then this was like one of the first Dynasty leagues I was in. And like literally a guy dropped him. Like, I was like, what? Like, wait, did you just use a first round pick on it? Like, and I mean, this was like, we were using ESPN for a Dynasty league, right? Yeah. Type thing. Like this was, 8 years ago now or whatever, but yeah, that's exactly it. Right. He didn't build a rapport. He wasn't on the field, and it was just like, oh, this guy's a bust. Like what? Jesus, let's calm down here a second, but then I was able to just pick him up off waivers and got myself an OBJ. But yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. I think that really makes sense from that value standpoint. So it almost makes me think if I am stuck with like a 111, 112, that means I have a really good team. I just came out of the championship. Maybe I have a good core already and I feel like I like him long-term. And so then maybe he is a good pick for me right there. But then again, what if, Olave goes to a better situation or George Pickens going to have some opportunity? Then maybe you're right. Value-wise, maybe I should take one of those guys. So yeah, I mean, it'll be an interesting decision. And I think we're going to see a lot of wide receivers go like at the end of the first, early second.
Yeah. And Dave just brought up a great example. That's Bateman. That's literally what happened with Rashad Bateman last season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now the value's just starting to kind of come back to where it should be. Right. But it's still not 100% there yet.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think too with Bateman, the fact that it was Baltimore who did pass more last year, but you worry about the passing volume there hurt him too. But if he gets into a better situation, maybe the injury won't hurt him as much, even if he doesn't start the year. But Scott, did you have a player or two you wanted to bring up with Kane?
I just had a couple things that I wanted to bring up, and more so like, so one example I want to give you, and this was good because we talked about KJ Hamler earlier. So I know you're a Big Ten guy, Penn State.
Yep.
We watched KJ Hamler play there. We watched him play in basically the same role.
Oh, you wanna talk about Jahan Dotson?
I do. I want to talk about Jahan Dotson. They are virtually the same size.
Yep.
Not quite the same player.
Yep.
But they were used very similarly. Now Dotson had a lot more production. I mean, Hamler always made plays. He was a good player in college. But like Dotson seems to be like super legit. However, they're about the same size. So naturally, I think people will make some of that. Now, maybe not like film guys. I'm just saying your average Dynasty player. They're going to go, wow, these guys are the same size. They went to the same school, things like that. How or why is Dotson different than Hamler? And why does he have more potential to have a higher ceiling?
Yeah, so most of it is the way that he attacks vertically for me. So if we look at Jahan Dotson and KJ Hamler only attacked vertically with speed. That was the only move that he had in his arsenal. And did it work? Yes. KJ Hamler is very fast.
The burner.
Right? And it makes a ton of sense, right? We've all seen so many Penn State games where they always seem to have that one really, really fast wide receiver. And you're like, how the hell does he get open every time in the secondary? And it just got to stop. And at some point, that's just the only guy that we got to guard, right? We just need to get two guys on him, and then Sean Clifford can't do anything. But we still can't figure that out sometimes. But I'm going to digress before I just fully lose it. But Jahan Dotson, he can do kind of everything, and he works a little more over the middle than KJ Hamler does because of the way that he can attack vertically, right? So what I mean when he attacks vertically, KJ Hamler, he's just really, really fast, and he's going to sprint and work to get upfield as fast as he can.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. That's his
9
goal.
routes. Yep. Okay.
And sure, he's going to sometimes turn those into slants, turns those into back shoulder curls, and a bunch of different things, right? But Jahan Dotson, he's already trying to win the route off the release. KJ Hamler was just trying to get down.
Yeah, he wasn't. Yeah.
Right. And so Jahan Dotson, that's why he does so many other things. And especially when he attacks over the middle a whole lot easier, is because he's already trying to win the route off the line of scrimmage. Right. And he's a much better route runner because of that, because his release is better. The way that he sinks his hips when he's cutting inside and out is better. The way that he uses head fakes is better. I think he's relatively faster play speed than Hamler was, not as much in a straight line burner, but just the way in and out of his breaks. I think his agility is a little bit better than Hamler's was, especially on the field. So I think all of that leads me to believe that like Jahan Dotson is going to be a better player in the NFL, right?
That's awesome.
But the downside the downside is, right, who is going to believe that the 5'9", 187-pound player is going to be able to attack over the middle of the field, right? With safeties getting bigger and faster, with there being more nickel coverage.
The era of the big slot, right?
Yep. And with all that happening, how is that going to affect Jahan Dotson? Now, I think where that affects him a little bit more is just in the NFL draft itself, right? I think even though we've had a lot of smaller, faster guys, I still think because he doesn't have the elite level of production, I think he ends up with kind of late round 2, early round 3 draft capital. But we know that that's totally fine. Like for fantasy football, that's great.
Yeah.
But the question is, are they going to utilize him all over the field in the same capacity that he was being used at Penn State? And I can't fully answer that without knowing what system he's going to go to. But I feel like with all the things that he's good at, you have to assume that he's going to be used a whole lot more in that offense. I think he reminds me more of like a smaller, faster version of Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Okay.
More than like just trying to do the helmet comparison to a guy like KJ Hamler.
Sure. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I mean, that's an incredible explanation. I mean, it's really helpful for me. So, yeah, I mean, I just think there's so much more to it than it's just so easy when you see guys that are the same size, went to the same school, they were used somewhat similarly. And it's kind of like, you just make that parallel, but yeah.
And I think
really
sometimes the parallels are warranted a little bit, just because teams are always going to try to get, guys that are similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Breece Hall and David Montgomery are similar players.
Sure.
Breece Hall is just more explosive.
Sure. Yeah.
And can get to the outside a little bit faster. But I think they have still some of the same issues, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's the way that they were coached. I think they're a little too indecisive behind the line of scrimmage. I don't think they attack vertically fast enough. I think the quote that he used was something about slow behind the line, fast when you hit the hole, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the John Madden quote is. I don't have it off the top of my head. But that's the way they were coached, and that's why we're going to see that with similar players and kind of those similar traits. But that doesn't mean they're necessarily similar prospects, but we are going to see similar traits, and that's the exact same thing that we're seeing with Hamler and Dawson in the regard of them really trying to get upfield as fast as possible. Just Dawson is trying to win just a lot faster.
Got it.
Okay, and unless you had another player you wanted to touch on, Scott.
I just wanted to ask, like, if there's anybody. I mean, this is kind of a running theme, right? As we just kind of ask everyone, is there anyone that outside of like the top guys that everybody knows, pick any position? Yes, I don't care, any player. It's wide open. Just any name that you want to put out there that you're like, you know what, this guy caught my eye. He's intriguing. I like some of the things he can do. You know, if a team believes in him or whatever, gives him an opportunity, I think he could be really good.
Yeah, like a guy you can grab in the third or fourth.
Or right. Draft. You know, more of a dart throw later, but just a name that we can keep an eye on, see what happens in the draft. Anybody, any position.
Yeah, so you're going to get more than one because
that's not I figured, but that's fine.
I've done this with me before. So we're going to start at the running back position. And so a big one for me is you're not going to hear a lot of people talk about Zonovan Knight, and you're not going to hear Zonovan Knight be day two. He's not a day two guy. He was a little bit slower at the 40. But the reason why we need to bring him up is he might be truly the best outside zone running back in this draft class, right? NC State is statistically one of the best outside zone running teams in college football. Right. And so Zonovan Knight, very, very good at it. And he runs with power. There's a reason why his nickname is Bam. So his nickname is Bam Knight. And he does have speed. Like, he was on kick returns, he was on punt returns, things like that. Like, you're not going to put a guy with not a lot of speed out there, right? That's just not the way it works. And what that means for me is that they're very confident in him in open space. So he can be used in the passing game as well. So if we end up seeing him go to a team that doesn't pick a running back in the first few rounds and they're an outside zone run scheme, like, if let's say that the Falcons don't end up picking a running back, they're still working out of an outside zone run scheme. Arthur Smith hasn't fully transitioned them to a power run scheme yet. They're working on it. It hasn't happened quite yet because it does take longer than a year. It takes longer than everyone thinks it does. And if they take Zonovan Knight, that means that they're fully running an outside zone run scheme. And if they take him in the 4th or 5th round, I'm probably moving him up. Right now, his ADP is like mid 4th. I'm probably looking late 3rd then, mid to late 3rd to get him on my team. Same with Miami. If he ends up going to Miami in, round 4, round 5, round 6, like, everyone's going to push him up then. But I think that's one running back to keep.
He was a beast in the college production.
Yeah, he's very, very good.
C2C leagues.
Yeah, Pierre Strong Jr. also very, very fast.
Coming
out of South Dakota State. That's my co-host Shane Hallam's guy. He was on Pierre Strong Jr. and Christian Watson well before anyone knew who either of them was. So big props to him on that. The wide receiver that I seem to like more than everyone else. Well, there's two of them. One is Eric Izukanma, the wide receiver out of Texas Tech, mainly because he's got every physical trait you could want, right? 6'4", 220, can fly. Right? He's a 4.4 guy. Like, there were some talks that he could run sub 4.4. I don't really remember off the top of my head what he fully ran, but very, very fast character. And he did better in an offense this year where it fully went back to the air raid system. Finally got a quarterback in Tyler Shuck before he ended up getting hurt. He was the transfer from Oregon going to Texas Tech. Very, very good season for him, and he was getting better. So I think he's interesting, especially with a team that wants to move the ball down the field. So I like him a lot. The other guy that I like a whole lot more than other people is Jalen Tolbert. Now, he's the wide receiver out of the University of South Alabama. Big producer. I think the biggest thing with him is he was never asked. So bear with me on this one. So the similar things that people are going to say about Treylon Burks and his route running are the exact same things that they're going to say about Jalen Tolbert
because of how he was used.
Yeah, neither of them were asked to. Yes, they were asked to go over the middle, right? Don't get me wrong there. But the way that they were asked to go over the middle were all speed routes, right? That means that they got audible to slants, drags, things like that when they were on off coverage, right? So the goal was just to attack vertically, 1 to 2 steps, break inside, get the ball, right? And both of them were good at that. But because both of them are fast. Jalen Tolbert, obviously not as fast as we fully thought that he was, especially we thought, at 6'3", where he was listed, and he ended up coming in at 6'1" and 3/8, I think.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that he attacks vertically really, really quickly because of that speed. I think the route running has some work, but depending on what kind of system that he goes into, I think he could end up being successful. Maybe not, right away, but I think he could find some success towards the end of the year, just because he is just a really, really good player. And I think he ends up finding success maybe towards that end of that first year or early second season. We're like, oh, where did this guy come from? He's like, well, he was just a 3rd round pick that we didn't really know what to do with. So.
Right. Okay. Awesome. I love it.
And then one last thing I wanted to ask before we finally move on to Find Me a Trade and finish up here was, is there any guy in the early part of the draft, kind of the corresponding question to what Scott asked, that you're lower on than consensus, that maybe could be a pitfall to avoid? Maybe if you have somebody in the first round, or maybe someone who we're talking late first, early second, something like that.
Well, before the combine, it would have been Kyron Williams.
now everybody else is there.
Yeah, I mentioned this in Scott's chat, in Scott Connor's chat. Someone asked me, like, what are your main takeaways from things? And I said, usually, if someone tells me that the best trait that a wide receiver has is contested catching, and the best trait that a running back has is pass blocking, I probably don't want them on my fantasy football team.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to hear that a lot, right? Mm-hmm. About some of these. Oh, N'Keal Harry, just great contested catch. Like, he's able to attack vertically, and that 50-50 ball becomes an 80-20 ball, right? Mm-hmm. And these are all lines that I say all the time because I think it's important that a guy can do that. But if that's his main trait, like, that's rough. Right. And we heard about Kyron Williams all the time, right? What is it? His best trait? It's pass blocking. And it's pass blocking for a guy that's 197 pounds. And he's good. He's very good at pass blocking.
He's good at it, yeah.
Yeah, he's great. But I don't get points for that.
No.
Yeah.
And then you hear but that means he gets on the field. Yeah, he gets on the field when it doesn't matter. Right? Did you get points for all of those pass blocking reps that Zeke got week 1 and week 2 when Zach Martin was out? Is that why he all of a sudden was the running back 1 on the week because he got 1 point per pancake? No. If you got 1 point per pancake eaten, then maybe Zeke would have gotten you more points, but that's just not the way it works in fantasy football. Sorry, I got fired up again.
That's good. I love it.
Roll here.
I love it.
A wide receiver that I'm probably off of more than other people is just because it's scary to me is George Pickens. I like George Pickens, right? And I think George Pickens is a talented player.
Yeah.
But I wonder if I think there's a slight chance, right, that we kind of see him kind of move down some boards, and people are going to be like, "Oh, but I thought he was really, really good." That's if they kind of forgot everything that happened his freshman year at Georgia. A lot of stuff, a lot of locker room stuff that he just wasn't the best teammate. That he just wanted the ball thrown his way the whole time. And I realized that you want that alpha guy to be wanting the ball all the time, but there was some talks that he wasn't just really in it for the team and things like that. And that was the exact same for the other wide receiver, Blaylock, that was also at Georgia. It was both of them. And things weren't really going right in the locker room. And obviously that had something to do with Georgia not being as good that year. That probably helped things kind of deteriorate in the locker room a little bit faster. But I think if George Pickens doesn't get kind of that, that nice capital, I think it might be difficult for me to fully trust him, because some people are saying that he could be a late first round pick, and that's difficult for me to see right now.
Like NFL wise, you're saying?
Both.
Okay. Yeah.
I think even
I don't think he's a first round
rookie
pick.
drafts.
I was actually just looking at a mock today, and I had him going to the Packers in the first round.
I don't get that. I don't get that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but I even think late first and rookie drafts, I think is hefty.
Yeah, I don't think you want to spend that capital on him.
But I think that's compared to people seeing these mock drafts and him going first round in these mock drafts, which I don't think quite is going to happen.
No.
But I think he's a really, really talented player. Don't get me wrong. Like, you even saw it against Alabama. He made one catch, and it was probably the most spectacular catch that we'd seen in that entire game, right? Absolute crazy body control and everything. I want him to be healthy, and I want him to be really, really good. But I don't know. I don't.
No, we'll see if he's matured, and we'll see what a team.
Right.
I mean,
but you're having to pick him over Chris Olave, Jamison Williams, Drake London, or a running back, and we just know that the value of running backs is just stupid. Right? Rookie running backs is just stupid. If they get day 2 capital, you're like, wheels up, baby. Like, you can either trade for him and give me a high-end quarterback too, or you can't get him at all. Right? That's like what we're looking at here. Like, do you want to trade me Aaron Rodgers for Kenneth Walker? No. All right, we're not doing a deal then. Right? Like, it's stupid how high these kind of values go, but we all know that that's the way that it is. And so if you're choosing kind of George Pickens over a day 2 running back, or kind of these other really good, wide receivers, or hell, even a first round quarterback.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Yep. Okay, so we don't keep Kane here till like past midnight my time.
This is part of my doing.
So we're fine. We can just keep.
True. It's only.
I go on a vacation tomorrow, so.
Well, we're still gonna get to our Find Me a Trade segment here. So this week it was submitted by Nurk at Nurkaleptic on Twitter. Scott, I'm gonna pull up the roster. You want to get into the settings while I do that?
All right, yeah. So this is this is closer to the leagues I play in. We're kind of getting back here. We had some weird ones lately, but 12 team PPR, Superflex, the 2.0 tight end premium, 40-man roster. All that looks pretty good. Start 10, still a little light, but it's not too bad. Quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, tight end, Superflex, and then your 3 flex spots. So you have a little bit of flexibility there with roster construction. Let's see. Nurk says he finished 4th in 2020, made a series of trades that following non-point scoring season, including giving away all of my draft picks to compete more in 21, and then everyone got hurt. So even though I didn't have any of my own picks, I started selling all my pieces to get younger or for other injured pieces to build for 22. I am happy with what I was able to acquire and position myself for this year, but I haven't made any trades in 22 so far, and I'm looking for a direction to take. Now, I did see that it looked like he lost the 101, or he gave up the 101, or what became the 101.
I
don't know.
I'm guessing it probably became the 101, but yes, he did.
I mean, I don't know what you got from that, but I'm not sure what you'd be happy with there. But I mean, not so much because there's some great 101 prospect, but more just because you could probably trade it to somebody. I mean, given we're talking here, a safe league, you're, in my experience, in my safe leagues, I'm typically able to find at least one sucker to take the 101 for, a really strong player that's already proven. But we'll see here. The interesting thing, which I think we're going to get into, but Rocky, you go through the roster first.
Yeah, let me get to the roster.
Okay.
He's pretty solid at quarterback. He's got potentially 5 starters here, maybe. If everything broke perfectly for him. He's got Jimmy G, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Patrick Mahomes. Actually, you could make a case that he has 6 starters, potentially. Jordan Love, if he goes to the Colts, like we were talking about, and Mitch Trubisky, who's been a little bit of a hot name in rumors recently.
And Kyle Trask, the
technically
starter
he
for the
start
Bucs,
too.
obviously.
Yeah. So,
obviously.
So literally, all 7 of those guys could have you could tell a story that they end up starting, and I think
right.
I think at least 4 of them are pretty much definite. I think Jimmy G is, and then Mac Jones, Lance, and Mahomes most likely. The running backs are Dobbins and Etienne are his top 2 guys. He has James Robinson, then mostly just a bunch of guys. Kenneth Gainwell is probably the most notable name of the other guys. Receivers, got a lot of receivers who looking to bounce back in 2022, which is not great. He does have Gabe Davis, who everybody loves.
Trade him, man.
Yeah, he's got Michael Thomas, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mooney, Jarvis Landry, Allen Robinson, Curtis Samuel. And tight end is pretty much a wasteland here. I'll just read off all 6 names because none of them are particularly good. Will Dissly, Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, Robert Tonyan, Adam Troutman, Max Williams. And as we said, and as he said, 0 picks in 2022. He does have all his 2023s. So I'm gonna get into mine real quick, just to sorry, hitting the wrong button there. Okay, I'm gonna get into mine real quick, just because I think it's kind of funny. Me and Scott had the exact same trade, and Scott happened to have a second one. But I wanted to trade Mac Jones to team a great success for TJ Hawkinson.
I think it's Rocky. I think it's a great success.
I wasn't going to do that.
Okay.
So I'll leave that to you. But yeah, the team has nice pieces, our team that we're looking to trade for, but I don't think he's contending this year. Maybe if everything broke perfectly, he could contend this year. So I'm not too worried about this year. I was looking basically to try and find a good value piece in wide receiver, tight end, and in a 2.0 tight end premium league, I love getting a young, good tight end. And TJ,
even if he plays for Detroit.
Yeah, and he's not quite that difference maker yet that like a Kelsey is or Andrews was this year, but I still think he can make that jump. Andrews did it in his 4th year. Hawkinson's going into his 4th year. He doesn't have as good quarterbacking as Andrews did, but we'll see. So I like getting Hawkinson back, and he's so valuable in this league. I was looking at it, just to kind of see how the 2.0 10 and premium played out. He would have been the at points per game, even with the not being the tight end 1. He would have been the wide receiver 7. He would have been the RB 9. He would have been the QB 18. It's you would have been better off starting TJ Hawkinson in your super flex than you would have been Mac Jones, because he scored 2.5 more points per game than Mac Jones did. But
exactly.
But the guy he's trading
#EJ manual stat.
So the guy he's trading him to, though, he has a really nice team. He's pretty loaded at both wide receiver and tight end. He has Pitts and Goddard. He also has some decent running backs, but his biggest weakness is quarterback. He is Trevor Lawrence and Daniel Jones. He does have the 101, but as we talked about, I don't know there's any quarterback. Willis is Kane's 101 and a lot of people's 101. May not even start the year. So if you're trying to contend, even if you hold on to that 101, it's possible you could trade that for a quarterback as well. But if you need to hold on to that 101, you're not necessarily getting a quarterback you can start there. So, and Mac Jones, I love trading Mac Jones because Mac Jones has a pretty decent amount of value, and as we sort of alluded to, it's mostly locked up into the fact it's security. I mean, I don't care about value that comes from security. So I don't like to pay for value that comes from security. I like to get value that comes from you score points for me and make a difference on my team. Right. So, and I think TJ Hawkinson does that more than Mac Jones does. And I think I think it's still possible to get a value boost at some point from TJ Hawkinson. It may not come as much as I hope in 2022 because he's still got Jared Goff, but especially the whole idea with he has the 4 quarterbacks. Like I said, he has Jimmy G, Mahomes, and Lance. I think are all going to start this year, plus Mac Jones. So you have the luxury of trading the quarterback without getting one back in a super flex, getting a really good point scoring piece that is also young, also going to hold value. That's my trade. I know Scott likes it because he came up with the same exact trade before he saw mine on there. So I'm curious what Kane thinks before and then maybe we can move on to your trade, Kane.
I probably wouldn't do that.
I knew it. I think the last time Kane was on, I didn't like my trade
either. We'll see you later.
Like I get that getting TJ Hawkinson would be a great success, but right, I would want to be moving some of those other quarterbacks rather than Mac Jones. That like I would be like anyone that you believe has some hype. That's why I'd be looking to move. I know he has a lot of quarterbacks, which is great because I also love quarterbacks. But I would be looking to move those Jimmy G's. I would be looking to move Jordan Love, Kyle Trask, Mitch Trubisky when they get their time in the sun, rather than moving off of Mac Jones and then finding out that you actually only had 3 quarterbacks on your roster the entire time.
I think that's a fair point. That's a fair point for sure. I would much rather trade one of the other guys.
I just don't think you'd get as much for the other guys.
Well, right, but just wait until they have their moment in the sun.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
Everyone gets sunburnt, right? They'll get their time.
Sure. Well, I mean, the interesting thing is, though, I mean, obviously we're looking at the same roster of who to trade away, but you have an entire league full of players, and we somehow came up with the same thing. Obviously, we both like Hawkinson, but essentially what we did was we identified the strength of the team, and we dealt from the strength to find the biggest weakness. I mean, he has essentially no one starting at tight end. Like, you're better off just like not starting one. I mean, honestly, there's not much of a difference between the guys that you have and start. I mean, what are you getting? 3 points? 4 for one catch and 10 yards, if that. So that's that 3 points. I mean, and that's if you're lucky, I guess. So, Foster Moreau, I suppose, when Waller was out, got you a couple decent games. But, getting a tight end that still has that upside, or at least I believe he does. And the thing about Mac Jones is the reason that I chose him specifically for right now in this time is that, like, Trey Lance has a far greater upside. Mitchell Trubisky, I believe, will score many more points per game, even though he may only do it for 1 year versus, 10 for Mac, right? But again, I want the points. I want to win. But Kane makes a great point. If you can just wait it out a little bit, which you can, it's March and this team's not going anywhere fast. So you can hang in there. Let's say next week, Mitchell Trubisky is the starting quarterback for pick your favorite landing spot. Like, he's given starter money. He's going to be the guy. Offer Mitch instead of, Mac Jones. I'm 100% on board with that.
I'm just not. Do you think Mitch or Jimmy or Jordan Love pull a Hawkinson level player at any point?
No.
Mitch could with the hype.
No.
Or if you need to throw in a third or something, I think definitely could with the rights. What if Mitch goes to the Steelers? People are like so excited about this. He's going to get a value boost.
I just don't know. Like, especially if someone's savvy and realizes, and they probably do if they have him on the roster, the value of a Hawkinson in this premium. Like, I don't know. I just don't. Mitch is definitely gonna get boost. I just don't think he's gonna have the value that a Mac Jones has, and I think you need the value. We talked about it before the show, actually, that we had plugged it into a calculator, and they kind of came out even. I think you need someone with the value of a Mac Jones to get a Hawkinson, and I don't know that they ever get that high. You can get something for them that you can't get now. I don't know that you ever get to that level.
All right, I got you. Well,
okay. So, Kane, you want to give yours?
Yeah, I see things much differently than most people. So
really?
The move, I think so. The move that I would do is I would trade Travis Etienne in a 2023 second round pick for Devin Singletary in a 2023 first round pick. The reason why I would do this is because I think there's a solid chance that Singletary scores at least as many points as Travis Etienne does in points per game next season, provided that the Bills don't draft a running back, which I doubt that they would. Even though we love to mock running backs to the Bills.
Always.
But their running back one is Josh Allen. Yep. But the issue is, right, is if I'm just looking at this team, right, I think the team that we're looking at is solid, probably gets into the playoffs, probably is the 6 seed, the 5 seed, somewhere like that in the playoffs.
Team for sure.
Yeah. The team that we're looking at here. And so the reason why I would make this is because you need to accrue assets, right? I think Travis Etienne has a higher chance of being a depreciating asset than an increasing asset at this point in his career. And yeah, I realized that he was hurt last season, and a lot of people still love Travis Etienne. I love Travis Etienne. But the value wise of Travis Etienne, more than likely, it's probably not going to go up. Like, Travis Etienne is somehow still a running back 2, doing nothing for an entire season and getting hurt, right? Which is close to unheard of for a running back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would make this move because I think it actually sets you up for the future. And if a few weeks into the season you're losing quite a few games, you have a lot of really, really solid pieces to really start the rebuild too, if that's what you choose to do.
Yeah, I really like this one actually. First of all, you're speaking my language because I was never a big ETN guy. So, but he still does hold a decent amount of value, and I think that's again some of that sort of like what we talked about Trey Lance, is he didn't get the chance to disappoint us by playing on that crappy Jacksonville offense all year. So, and if you can pull that 23 first, I mean, I think you need somebody probably that was an ETN guy that maybe had him as the RB1 or RB2 coming out last year. But for sure, if they believe in, the pass catching upside, all that, Trevor Lawrence second year, Doug Peterson, I think you can possibly at least pull this off. And if you can, I love getting the first. And like you said, I don't think there's a massive production difference between Singletary and ETN unless they draft like Breece Hall or something, right? Which I don't think we think is going to happen. So,
and even if they do, and Singletary doesn't perform for you this season, like, you still have an extra 23 first,
right?
And like those are worth a lot.
And like you said, and like we all kind of said, I don't think any of us think he might make the playoffs. I don't think any of us think this guy's winning a title this year, barring some great trading over the next 9 months or so. So, yeah, I mean, you get the 23 first. Like we said, he still has his own, so that gives him 2 next year. And yeah, I mean, I'd be happy with just getting that 23 first for ETN if he ends up not contending anyway. So, so Scott, you want to finish this up with the other one you came up with?
Yeah,
after our duplicate trades
for sure. And last note on that, just because this is such a rare thing. In my current 40+ leagues, I have exactly 0 shares of Travis Etienne, just so you know. And it is, I mean, there's like maybe 4 players that I have 0 shares of. To have 0 in 40+ leagues is really hard to do. So
yeah, I have 1.
That's how much I love Travis Etienne. And I actually really loved him in college. He was like one of my favorite players to watch, but that's just how it goes, Okay, so funny thing is that we had this same trade, and I don't put my trades on until the end because I put them on right before the show.
Time that's ever happened. We literally have the same exact trade.
Yeah, I just don't want to be influenced by anything else that I see. So I read the comments that the listener gave us, and I look at the league settings, and then I pull the link and I go do my homework, and then I put it on right before the show. And I didn't even know until Rocky brought it up because I didn't look at it. I just copied and pasted. And and then Rocky's like, he stole my trade. So it's pretty incredible. However, I did have an alternative because I honestly didn't think you could get Hawk for Mac, because I mean, I wouldn't trade Hawk for Mac if I had Hawk. So just because, I mean, Mac's like an replaceable RB2 to me, so I just don't really care. Anyway, I thought another alternative option here would be the team 2 for the money to look to trade again, whether it's Trubisky signing a contract or Jimmy G going to a good spot, or again, Mac Jones, to fill in that tight end spot to a guy that everyone hates at this point, which is Evan Ingram, And then this particular team had 2 firsts, so I took the later of the 2 firsts. And again, I don't think that you can actually pull off that trade. You might be able to, or you might have to add in something to that, like a 23-second or something. But to me, it'd be worth this team getting a mid first, not only a starting tight end that you plug in right now, but then also you're going to get a mid first where you can get a player that you can add to your roster right away. So that's just where I felt like you could improve much more with trading away from your depth. When you have Patrick Mahomes, you can do a lot of things with that second quarterback spot, and having all the options that he has, it still seems like the right move to me is to trade from that strength.
I agree, and I think you could pull that up because, like you said, everybody hates Ingram. So,
yeah, I mean,
and you could. You're probably going to get some kind of value boost just when he signs somewhere else.
Exactly. Where just getting away from the Giants,
and where he's likely probably wherever he signs, it's probably going to seem like he's definitely the incumbent starter.
Jacksonville, Cincinnati.
And if he actually produces in there, you could get even another boost. Like if he goes there and actually,
I'm not sure I even care because I'd probably just trade him again if somebody goes that.
That's
crazy.
What I'm thinking. That was my main point. That once he signs, you could trade him right then and get more than you're valuing him at here. But yeah, I like that one. I like getting the pick because, like we said, this guy needs as many assets as he can get to keep building. Anything to finish us off, Kane, before we end the show here?
Not that I know of. I think that wraps her up.
Okay. So that's the end of our Find Me a Trade. I want to thank Kane for coming on the show tonight. Had a blast talking with you. Loved you getting worked up over certain topics. It was a joy to watch.
I'm always worked up about something.
And I just wanted to give you a chance to give everybody your Twitter handle, let them know where they can find you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can always find me on Twitter at Devy_Kane. You can find me on a few different places. You can find me on the Devy Marketplace podcast, where we take an in-depth look at Devy values and try to figure out what we can actually trade them for. And I think that's probably the only Devy show like it. So I think it's a unique approach to Devy. And if you're looking for another free resource, like hop in the Devy Marketplace Discord. That's completely free. I think we're almost hitting 500 people in there at this point. So make sure you're hopping in there. Like, it's an absolute blast. We're talking Devy, C2C, Dynasty, redraft, betting content, like just a ton of stuff. And then you can always find someone to answer your questions and stuff there. So it's an absolute blast. So make sure you're getting in there. And then I also am a co-host of the Dynasty Wall Street podcast for the Dynasty Trade Calculator.
Yep, and I all that stuff is great. I highly recommend Devy Marketplace. Even if you're not a big Devy player, it's still great info to have on future classes. And a lot of the times, especially this time of year, talking a lot about this current rookie class. And they even do. You guys even do episodes sometimes where you talk very little Devy at all. You'll occasionally do an episode where it's a lot more Dynasty centric, NFL centric. So I just recommend everyone give that a listen. And definitely. I mean, all the stuff you do is great, but I just want to make that clear because I think some people see Devy and just like, that's not for me.
Yeah, the next 3 shows are actually not about Devy at all. So on the next episode that'll be released for the Devy Marketplace, that is all about the NFL draft. So we'll do a complete first round mock draft with explanation. And then the week after that, we're going to really dive into some rookies and see what the tape actually says. And the week after that, we're doing some Dynasty content. So we try to mix it up as much as possible because we know that though Devy is what we focus on a lot, that's only a small portion of the game that we play, right? Sure. And sometimes even the best move you can do is just selling your Devy pieces to people that really, really want them and having your Dynasty team be as good as possible, right? There's multiple different ways to do it. But feel free to give us a listen. It's an absolute blast. So make sure you hop on over there and get in the free Discord. Like, it's absolutely free. Like, it's one of those resources that's actually fully free.
Yeah.
Like, hop in. It's such a good time. We have a blast.
Okay. Again, thanks for coming on. I'm just going to finish up with some of our stuff here. Just want to tell everybody you can follow me at Dynasty FF Addict, follow Scott at Scott_Sidlow. Our third co-host who's not on tonight is Andrew. You can follow him at Andrew Hall FF. The show's at Dynasty Junkies. Follow at Dep_Network. What else is there? Subscribe to the Dap Network so you can see us when we go live. You can see Fantasy Timeline when it goes live. Occasionally Trade Addicts goes live. And give us a rating and review, and just it'll make us be happy. So Scott, as usual, we're super long here, so take us out.
Hey, hour 45, baby. That's the floor. we just hit it. Let me get us there. We got like 10 more seconds. Hey, shout out to everybody in the comments. Ridley Truther, I think you need to update your name, bro. We gotta get that fixed. And I believe you actually took Ridley in the C2C or the Devy CKC startup we just did. So sorry, man. That sucks. Toronto Dave, Kyle Senra, everybody that's always in there. Some new peeps as well. We love you guys. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for the questions. Nurk, the Nurkinator, the Nurkmeister, the Nurkaleptic. We appreciate your submission. Everybody keep sending us those. The more we have, we could pick and choose better and make it easier on ourselves. So we appreciate. I'm just kidding, but just send them in. Just send them in. We'll get to them. We're actually going to do an All Find Me a Trade show very soon. Yep. So keep those submissions coming in. We love it. And for our host Rocky, for myself, and for our awesome guest Devy Kane, I'm Scott Sidlow. Junkies out.